The principles of assessment serve as guidelines to ensure that the test is useful, appropriate, and effective. These principles are crucial to be taken into consideration because assessment is an important aspect of the educational process. How do you know whether a test is effective, appropriate, useful, or in down-to-earth terms, a good test? We can identify 5 cardinal criteria for testing a test: practicality, reliability, validity, authenticity, and washback. Practicality. This principle refers to the time and cost constraints during the construction and administration of an assessment instrument, meaning that the test should be economical to provide and the format of the test should be simple to understand. Some characteristics of impractical tests are: these tests are excessively expensive, they are too long, they require a handful of examiners to administer and score, and it takes several hours to grade a test. Reliability means that the assessment is consistent and dependable, which means that the same score will be achieved from the same type of students no matter when it is scored or who scores it. There are 4 types of reliability: student-related, which can be personal problems or sickness; rater-related, which includes bias and subjectivity; test administration-related, which is the conditions of test-taking process; and test-related, which is basically related to the nature of the test. A reliable test is consistent in its conditions across 2 or more administrations, gives clear directions for scoring evaluation, has uniform rubrics for scoring evaluation, lends itself to consistent application of those rubrics by the school. Also, a reliable test contains items, tasks that are ambiguous to the test taker. To make a test reliable, it is important to write scoring procedures clearly and to train teachers to be able to score the assessment correctly. Validity is the most complex criterion of an effective test. This refers to the extent to which inferences made from assessment results are appropriate, meaningful, and useful in terms of the purpose of the assessment. A valid test measures exactly what it proposes to measure, does not measure irrelevant variables, relies as much as possible on empirical evidence, involves performance that samples the test's criterion. There are different types of evidence. Content-related evidence can be identified if you clearly define the achievement you are measuring. Criterion evidence evaluates how well a test can predict a concrete outcome. Construct-related evidence determines the direction and content of language testing. Consequential evidence encompasses all the consequences of a test, including considerations as its accuracy in measuring intended criteria. Lastly, face validity. It can be compared with content validity, which describes how far the test actually measures what it aims to measure. Face validity is not an objective measure of how good a test may be. Another principle of language assessment is authenticity. The assessment instrument is authentic when it is contextualized, contains natural language and meaningful, relevant, and interesting topics, and replicates a real-world experience. Authenticity was also defined as the degree of correspondence of the characteristics of a given language test task to the features of a target language task. The last principle is washback. This principle refers to the consequence of an assessment on teaching and learning within classrooms. Washback can be positive and negative. Positive washback refers to the desired effects of a test, while negative washback refers to the negative consequences of a test. In order to have positive washback, instructional planning can be used. A test that provides beneficial washback positively influences what and how teachers teach, positively influences what and how learners learn, gives learners feedback, is more formative in nature than summative, provides conditions for peak performance. Applying principles to classroom testing. The 5 principles of assessment go a long way toward providing useful guidelines for both evaluating and existing assessment procedure and designing one on your own. Language assessment is an extraordinarily broad discipline with many branches, interest areas, and issues. The process of designing effective assessment instruments is far too complex to be reduced to only 5 principles.